not just within this forum, but even outside of it, right? How does the community at large come back to STS, give feedback on what type of sessions they would like to see, what type of engagement they would like to see internally within the association, but also broadly across Singapore in different fields. So without further ado, let me get started with the agenda. So I'm going to do a quick intro just so you know what my role is, a little bit what my journey has been, and then the extent, the context of the sharing that I'll be doing. It comes primarily from the role that I play at PayPal. So I'll talk a little bit about PayPal, just so everybody understands, the perspective that I share comes from a particular industry, a particular sector, and a particular company in it, which is just to say that it doesn't mean that if you have a different perspective, a different view of how things are evolving, it's not correct. It's just that it's different. Then I want to quickly talk about some of the trends, specifically from an cybercrime landscape perspective, bring it and zero in a little bit more specifically in the ASEAN region, Singapore region, and then quickly look at then what does it mean in terms of specific careers, what tools, what career pathways are available within Singapore, and then how can you kind of pursue them. We'll kind of conclude with, once again, some of the certifications that people could pursue a little bit. I'm not going to go too deep into any specific certifications because I want to try and stay as, unbiased as possible, but be more than happy to dig a little bit deeper in the Q&A section on any specific questions that anybody has on a certification, on an industry, on a specific role, so on and so forth. So real quick, I'm originally from Bombay, went to US to do my master's, stayed there for more than a decade. All of it in cybersecurity in early 2000, 2001, when I was studying that, looking at cryptography. I didn't know whether I'd stay in that field or will have to switch my careers depending on the opportunities that'll come. The dot-com bubble had just busted when I graduated, and one way or the other, I've been extremely fortunate that I've always had a role that has been related with security, whether it is network security, architecture, compliance, helping design networks for different organizations, and then leadership. I've been with PayPal a little over 11 years, and the last 9 have been in Singapore, where I moved to start our Asia Pacific cybersecurity team. And over the years, again, different opportunities, different markets, different challenges have come, and have been lucky to once again volunteer through my involvement in ISACA as a board member. I was the president. I just ended my term in early 2021, and now I'm the past president, working with governments across the region, Japan, Australia, obviously Singapore, Malaysia, India, to help influence some of the policies around cybersecurity, looking at how they find the balance between what organizations do, what customers expect as the digital transformation journey continues, as the adoption of new tools and technologies happen. How do they find balance between innovation and safety? And as Kasi mentioned, I stay involved with the community in different ways, from startups to nonprofits to events like these. And again, tennis. So even if cybersecurity is not something that you're interested in, but when I pick up a game of tennis, I'd be more than happy to have a chat about that as well. All right, a little bit about PayPal. It is also a 2-decade old startup. We call it the oldest fintech startup around, and one of the largest as well. What is unique about PayPal, as opposed to and those that are familiar with financial services, compare us sometimes with a bank or with a credit card company, um, or something in between, or a marketplace. But what is different is it's a two-sided platform, which means that our customers are both the consumers as well as merchants. And the reason I mention it is from a cybersecurity perspective. It gives a very, very unique view into how cybercrime comes from an infosec perspective, which is at the login level, who's coming in and knocking at your door. At the network layer, what type of brute force or different attacks, credential stuffing, and others are coming. Or at the compliance level, where you want to try and detect whether the financial instrument, credit card, bank accounts, and others are fake or real or stolen, to the actual risk of the transaction. Whether it is the person who say they are, or is it something that they have stolen and then taken an identity from somebody else. And that gives us the ability to find ways to stop a pattern that has been detected in different ways. And when I share different types of attacks, it'll become more obvious. But it is truly unique, even within financial services, to have a two-sided platform where both the customer as well as the merchant, or the consumer, the buyer, as well as the seller, is a customer from our perspective. This is, again, kind of expanding on, there are certain brands that you may be not familiar with that are owned by PayPal, and I haven't listed all of them, but Braintree and Paydiant and Venmo and Zoom, they're not all available in Singapore per se, but from a global landscape perspective, everything around financial services and democratizing it to make payments easier, to manage your money a little bit quicker and cheaper and faster, to do business across the world, to offer your services and products around the world without having to worry about how your data is used, is kind of the USP of what PayPal does. And that's why trust is at the center of what we offer. And again, having worked here over a decade, it allows me to look at different things and perspective of how technology is changing behavior, and then how do you make sure that from a security side, we try and keep that growth happening. We keep the adoption of, whether you are a young kid or an old individual who has taken on to a mobile phone for the first time, and during times like COVID, trying to survive through online purchases and payments in the most secure manner. So with that, let me kind of quickly jump into cybersecurity trends. And as I go through it, I'm gonna speak for about, 40 minutes or so. If you have any questions, please do use the link that was posted in chat. And I will try to get as many questions as possible. And if we can't get through all of them, we'll try and answer them offline as well. But it's important that you keep your questions coming. And whenever, to the admins, if you feel like there is a question that you feel I need to be interrupted and we need to ask them now, please, by all means, just let me know, and then we can address them while I'm speaking as well. So it's important to kind of think about why cybersecurity as a function is growing, why not everything is nice and hunky-dory, and with millions of people in Southeast Asia, there's 600 million people coming online for the first time, people getting internet through their mobile phones for the first time, and some of the applications that they use as soon as they get over social media to actually make a difference in their lives is in financial services. And so that's why it's kind of important to know that as the customers move online or to a particular technology, so do the attackers, so do the abuse, and different types of attacks then come on. So I don't know how many, I'm sure all of you have heard of phishing, but I don't know how many of you have heard of smishing. If you haven't heard of it, I'm sure you've probably experienced it. It's nothing but SMSs that are fake, right? That are sent by somebody pretending to be from your bank or from a healthcare association or from an immigration authority, telling you that something's going on. And people realize that while email is the primary channel for sending these attacks, and while people were still clicking on the emails, sending it over SMS has much higher success rate from a click perspective, and that's why smishing as an attack vector has picked up quite a bit recently. Synthetic identities, as the name suggests, is nothing but a fake identity that takes combinations and bits and pieces from different identities that have been stolen over the years, and then piecing them together to create a fake one where individually everything is actually true, but together they help create a completely fake account. And it's extremely hard for merchants, for businesses to know that an identity is fake until it's too late, because the phone number is real, the bank account is real, the name is real. However, they don't all belong to the same individual. They are all from a different place. Just like everybody is learning and adopting the new technology, innovations, and advancements to make their lives better, so are the hackers and so are the attackers. As you will hear from, I think, speakers in the future around cloud, around AI and other things, these are not just tools that make things easier for us. They are also the same tools, the same technology that attackers use to make their lives easier, to make their attacks more successful, to make their attempts a bit more powerful for organizations like all of ours, harder to defend against. 5G, as it starts getting deployed around the world, will make all of this 10 times or maybe 100 times worse, because now everybody will have speed like never before. They will have access like never before, and it will become extremely hard for organizations to try and defend against them. I mean, it's already, we are seeing some of the DOS attacks or DDoS, which is either denial of service or distributed denial of service, hitting hundreds of gigabits per second, and that makes services for some of the providers extremely hard to keep up when an attack like that happens, especially when the target is one, and you have networks or of bots, which basically takes over either home routers or other compromised machines to then start attacking from many different places where it's not easy to block those attacks. 5G makes it extremely harder to then defend. Cloud jacking, again, there are, people are on their journey to move their workloads onto the cloud, which means not just that they have a little bit less control on what's happening because the infrastructure is not owned by those organizations, but also it's harder to detect when somebody else has taken over a virtual machine on the cloud and are using it for nefarious purposes, again, either to steal their own data, but more often than not to perpetrate an attack against some of the other networks. And then vehicle attacks, are just some of the novel ideas, where as internet connectivity kind of becomes very prevalent, whether you are on a MRT, whether you are in your car, in your bus, anytime you're traveling, you can come in, park outside an organization, do your attack and leave. That leaves very little trace, both at the origination side as well as on the detection and then on the remediation or containment perspective to defend against these type of attacks. So what does all of this mean when this happens? What it means is, no country, no industry, no organization, no individual is immune to these type of attacks. It is global in nature, and every single entity that I just mentioned, if they have something of value, if they have an identity, if they have some data, if they have a financial instrument, then an attack can happen against them. Just because we are small, just because we have pretty decent border controls, does not mean, or because we are some small business that nobody cares about, does not mean that an attack will not happen to our company or to our account. The second is there is supply chain risk, right? So it's not just limited to us alone or as an organization or even an individual. There are a lot of other providers who we rely on to provide different components, from hardware to software to data to connectivity. And the weakest link in this supply chain is the one that if and when they get compromised, everything is fair game in terms of lateral movement, and then attack reaching you as well. Um, you know, I'd like to think that some of you, at least, if not all of you, have heard of the SolarWinds attack that happened in December 2020, where hundreds of companies, government agencies, everybody got compromised because a piece of software that they all used had been compromised, and the code at the code level, right? So nobody knew that for the longest time that the code that they were getting had a piece of malicious code that was allowing the attackers to come into their network and look around. And for some, they stole their IP. For some, they just stayed in the network and used it for ransomware type of attacks. And for some other, they stole data. So supply chain is is becoming more and more critical. On one hand, everybody, because of internet connectivity, relies on other partners to provide different types of services so they can focus on their own core services. But on the other, there is the demarcation between what's yours and what your partners and what your vendors is becoming blurrier by the day. So it's important to understand those type of risks. Cybercrime as a service is picked up. So it used to be that you had to be a really, really smart computer engineer to become an attacker, and somebody who does hacking for a living to get anywhere close to being able to make a living out of these type of things. Now they realize that anybody that wants to purchase a service can go to the dark web, hire somebody else and say, these are the individuals, these are the companies, these are the type of data that I'm looking for. And is anybody out there who can provide this? So I don't really need to do anything. I don't really need to learn anything if I really want to cause harm or steal data. And the service is extremely easy to go and procure. And then because of all of this, clearly the regulators, the governments, the agencies are not going to sit idle and do something, right? Take appropriate measures to try and arrest this trend, to try and make sure that the people who are doing good, who are providing these services, stay ahead of the attackers. And that means that they have to create regulations, laws, enforce them, create a lot of different mechanisms for the ecosystem to continue to thrive, to stay safe. And we'll touch upon a little bit of that as well, to say how is data kind of at the core of all of that, and from a protection perspective, how different, on one hand, the breaches continue to happen, and the numbers are just mind-boggling, as you can see on the slide. But that would result in industries and organizations being expected to do more in terms of investing in fortifying their defenses, and thereby creating new roles that we could all look at as career opportunities. So just to kind of close on these type of global trends on what's happening, you could see that from since 2015 till now, and then going forward, the cost of cybercrime globally as well as in ASEAN is rising at an astronomical rate. It's trillions of dollars, and the amount of time that it takes to detect is not coming down. The amount of effort that it takes to contain and then to mitigate these attacks is not coming down. So the amount of investments that is needed continues to grow. COVID clearly accelerated all of this, right? Overnight, from n number of offices. So for us, it was 56 offices. We became 30,000 offices, which means every individual employee now was asked to work from home. And that means that their home network became an office network, and you have to defend against those. From a phishing perspective, we saw incredible amount of new fake websites coming up, either offering fake cure or just giving information and then stealing data or taking over individuals' machines or phones to then use it for some other attack somewhere else. Basically, COVID, as bad as it was from a healthcare perspective, it has been equally, if not even worse, in terms of cybercrime and how much data and money has been stolen during the last 2 years. Breaches from a ASEAN or Asia perspective have continued to grow, as I just mentioned, which means that the compliance burden has risen as well. Over the last 24 months, and I'll talk about it, the number of regulations that have come out around Asia is also incredible. All the governments that were waiting to look at, how to find that balance between continue to still empower organizations, continue to still encourage innovation, adoption, suddenly had to think about how do they still maintain a steady pace of growth while maintaining trust in the overall ecosystem. So trust has become an extremely important attribute that the government wants to maintain in the overall digital kind of space. And then, when we think about ASEAN specifically, Singapore clearly is a leader when it comes to technology. Singapore has been driving a lot of these trends, a lot of adoption of technology, a lot of public-private collaboration in coming up with good public policy, in coming up with good accelerators, innovators, startups that create opportunities. And so I'd like to think that the same pattern should repeat or would repeat when it comes to trust and safety online. So with that, let me kind of move into Singapore specific landscape, and just to kick it off again, a shameless plug on a report that I had the privilege of commissioning here at PayPal, and as a CISO, clearly. When I look at what's happening, when I speak with our boards, when I speak with the regulators, clearly, as we are complying with different things, a question comes, a small business that uses our service, that's wondering what new regulations are going to come up, wondering what type of new attacks are coming up, wondering what is the impact of this. So we wanted to answer the question of whether the changes that the government is bringing from a regulatory perspective, are they having the desired impact or not? So we did a survey of fintech companies, small and large, across the 10 ASEAN nations, obviously Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, and Thailand were the major ones, but we also included the others, to ask them a variety of different questions, from investments in cybersecurity to resource and the talent availability to compliance versus security. Where are they investing? Are they thinking about growing their business beyond, or is cybersecurity a consideration when they think about taking their startup from outside of Singapore into Thailand versus Indonesia, Philippines versus Malaysia, and so on and so forth. And all the results and this entire report is available for free download. You could look it up by scanning this QR code, or I'll post it in the chat here in a little bit during the Q&A session. But what the report talks about are the results of the survey. The second is, and I think that's my favorite part, is we have created a cybersecurity matrix that looks at 6 key aspects of what constitutes a healthy cyber ecosystem, from policy to investments to talent to collaboration to awareness to ultimately just the interaction and collaboration that happens and the availability of information. And we have rated where those efforts are in each of the ASEAN countries. So anybody that wants to think about or can use this as a reference right now, at least, because it's a point in time analysis. Over the years, as the initiatives kind of grow and do better, it'll change. But I feel it's a good kind of framework to look at what's happening across ASEAN in different aspects of cybersecurity ecosystem within the fintech industry. And then lastly, it talks about a few recommendations that I feel are relevant from our experience of doing similar type of work in more than 200 markets around the world. Now, Singapore specifically, as I mentioned, SolarWinds, so supply chain, the number of attacks that were going on, MAS, which is Monetary Authority of Singapore, right away, right after SolarWinds came out, published updated their technology risk management guidelines, which is a requirement for every single financial services organization, irrespective of their size, in Singapore. And the key aspects of the update were just these 2 things, right? One, to have a strong risk governance and oversight. Basically, them saying that it's not just enough to buy the latest tools. It's not just enough to have, your CISO or engineers telling that they are doing the right thing, but you have to find ways to get the boards involved, to get the senior management involved in understanding how cyber risk, just like credit risk, just like operations risk, just like financial risk, just like human, HR risk, cyber risk is equally important for the board to pay attention. And the second thing they said, which is extremely, I think, important, is they introduced the concept of cyber resilience. Resilience, as you all know, is the ability to get up after you have fallen, which means that everybody understands that it's not when, but it's not if, but it's when an attack will happen within your organization. So to go beyond just the detection and prevention of cybercrime attacks that I was talking about in the previous slides, to thinking about what will you do when that attack has already happened, and coming up with ways of recovering after that attack. They talk about these 13 different areas, and there are very specific requirements around that. The reason to put this here is also starting to move from attacks to how the industry is responding, so that then we can take the conversation into what type of roles are getting created in this space, and then how can you either start developing your expertise or training certifications in that area, and more importantly, make a case for either switching or starting in a specific area that you feel that your existing experience could be leveraged, and or you have enough interest in growing and learning. Last thing I'd say, once again, from the organization that I mentioned, ISACA is a nonprofit educational organization that is global, more than 150,000 members around the world. again, 200 plus chapters like this, volunteers. In Singapore, it's more than 3,000 members or professionals who get certifications and then come in and as a community, work towards, I guess, improving their skills in this area. We have been doing a survey for the last 3 years, again, across our membership to understand the trends from what type of initiatives organizations are taking on when it comes to cybersecurity, to skill set and the need for education and where it goes, and then major trends. Again, you could find this report of the survey for free by scanning this QR code, or I'll post the link when we get into the Q&A section, to at least know specifically in Singapore by professionals that work in this industry, what do they think about key aspects of cybersecurity. This is just a kind of a infographic showing the type of people who participated in the survey. And as you can say, it has a pretty wide distribution across decision makers to practitioners, from IT and finance industry to government, healthcare, to a small organization to a extremely large organization. And it is purely from Singapore. So the views are extremely relevant for somebody who wants to understand what's happening here on the ground. While there are a lot of findings and details can be downloaded from that link, at a high level, these are the 3 key areas that Isaka and Frost and Sullivan, who we partner with to conduct the survey and analysis, found. One, that as I mentioned, there is a new perimeter, right? People are continuing to work from home, and even when COVID is no longer an issue, I think there will be, it would be fair to say that the perimeter isn't going to be the same. People will have a hybrid work environment, which means from a protection perspective, we have to think about not just the office network, but also individual home networks, also areas in where people work, whether it is Starbucks, whether it's their car, MRT, and so on and so forth. So the idea of, you may have heard of zero trust, is becoming more and more popular to say, do not trust anybody until they have gone through multiple layers of authentication and authorization and identification to get them to do what they have done. And how do you find that, again, balance between convenience and security? Supply chain, I think I spoke quite a bit about it already, but it is truly becoming an important aspect. And supply chain is not just limited to financial or BCPDR or hardware, but equally important is to look at the software supply chain, to look at the data supply chain, to look at the connectivity supply chain, and see where are your dependencies for your business, to stay on. If a provider went down, what would the impact be to your business? And then think about, how do you engage them in testing? How do you understand concepts like software escrow and make preparations for an incident to happen, and how would you come around? And then holistic security kind of brings it all together to say, it's not just about data, it's not just about access control, it's not just about software security or hardware security or network security, but all of that has to come together, and you have to take a layered approach with multiple aspects and think of it as a mesh. As how do you provide leverage of the tools and the policies that you have across the organization. So all that means is the landscape is getting riskier, which means on one hand, we need to be more careful, but on the other, that there is extreme shortage of talent for people who can do this type of work. And if you are somebody who is interested in it, there's lots of opportunities. Once again, you can scan the QR code to get the entire survey downloaded for free. And last thing I would say on the trends is this, again, a snapshot of Gartner's predictions that just came out a couple of weeks ago. Um, Looking at the next 2 to 3 years, as you decide what is the area that you want to specialize in, what is the trend that will most highly impact the work that you do, the career that you are in, the industry that you are in. These are some of the high level trends to think about as to what's happening. Now, I wouldn't pay too much attention to the percentages or the numbers that, because that's not what the intention is. The idea is to for you to start thinking about, personal information. Clearly, privacy is an area with GDPR coming out a few years ago, PDPC coming out with their PDPA Act, India right now debating, the privacy law. It's clear that every single country in the world, every single government is trying to deal with and understand how do you find that balance between access and availability of services, which are for free, and finding the balance with how do you protect that privacy? How do you prevent organizations from using or misusing that data that is shared for different things that either manipulate, or in the worst case misinform people to make certain decisions that ultimately harm them. So mesh architecture is an interesting new trend. It is looking at how do you quickly reduce the impact of an incident. And I touched upon it as in a layered defense perspective. If you have an architecture that is not just a simple 3-tier where everything is laterally connected, but there is a mesh where just because you are in one of the quadrants, you can't just hop over into the next. Is important to have that segmentation, to look at concepts like zero trust that reduce that lateral movement of, once one server is compromised, everything else in that environment is gone. Once a piece of code in a service that you make available is compromised, all the code libraries get compromised, and then it becomes extremely hard. But to try and think about microservices, but at the architecture level, on how the networks are deployed. I think security services clearly have been growing. There are a lot more providers now. There will be some consolidation in that area. Third party continues to stay, a most important threat. Again, I think I kind of beat that horse quite a bit from a supply chain perspective. There's lots to pay attention to. Ransomware, every single day we hear about one company or another getting compromised through a ransomware, and then they have to decide on one hand whether to pay the ransom or not, on the other whom to inform, and then the most importantly how to bring the business back. So there are a lot of countries right now considering legislations and laws looking at the ransomware threat as well. Board, I spoke and I showed what MAS has done for a Singapore-based financial services company, but that will continue to grow from a global perspective, where board's involvement in cybersecurity risk will grow. So if you are somebody, again, in a leadership position, thinking about what are the key things that board is concerned about, clearly cybersecurity is on top of their mind, and they are the trend is moving where there are, if not dedicated committees, at least requiring somebody with this knowledge to be on the committee that is responsible for risk at most of the boards. Resilience, again, we spoke about the investments that are happening in detecting and prevention, but now everybody accepts that it is just a matter of time that their organization will get compromised, and then hence the leaders want to know how quickly can we come back after being compromised, what type of incidents can we deal with without too much damage being done. And then last but probably the most important trend as well is around OT. The smart devices that we have, the cars that we have, the home appliances that we have are all getting connected to the internet, and that means that they will have uh, be an attack surface. So on an individual level, you need to protect them, but also from a career perspective, OT becomes a really important area to consider for anybody that is either already in that field or interested in entering that field from a cybersecurity perspective. All right, so now making it into what does all of that mean from a career perspective, there's a lot of good resources, but it would be a shame for me to go and redefine the wheel. I had again the privilege of participating in the initiative that Skills Future, which is a government organization and a partnership between IMDA and GovTech and a couple of other agencies in Singapore was trying to do to build maps, career maps or career transformation maps for individuals that want to enter a variety of different fields, but specifically within infocom and technology. And again, cybersecurity is just one area within infocom and technology. There's lots of other things that you could look at, and I'll post the link as well, once again, for where you can get more details on these career transformation maps. But they do a pretty decent job in kind of segmenting out what different areas exist. And then if you look at, specifically in the cybersecurity, how different domains kind of are evolving to then offer different roles. And then once you are doing a particular role, how do you grow into the next level? Ultimately, what's the next level after that? What type of experience is required? What type of skill set are required? What type of certifications, qualifications you could gain to continue your journey and development in your career? So, in cybersecurity, they kind of have broken it into these, I think, 8 areas that you can look at at a high level, defining where you are from a level perspective, as well as from a domain perspective, and then map it down to what type of skills you may be needing to either transfer into a different area or to grow within that specific area. Each of these, obviously the slides kind of, are from that tool, but what they've done is not just created the slides and PDFs and other things, but an actual tool that allows you to click at these individual roles and then look at 2 key aspects. One, what are the requirements for different skill sets that you need to get into this role? And 2, what is the proficiency level? So, it's not that a cyber risk analyst would require the same proficiency level in understanding risk as a risk manager, right? They would definitely need a different level of proficiency to continue to grow. There is also paths from how do you transfer from one track to another, ultimately all of them leading to being a CISO at an organization. I highly recommend kind of, digging deep into these career transformation and pathways that have been created. And even if you don't want to be a CISO, there are lots of other roles that are coming. CISO is a kind of a proxy for if you want to be a risk officer, if you want to be a compliance officer that is dealing specifically in technology, if you are in audit, if you're in governance, if you are in threat engineering. This is just a simplified version of categories of job that exist, and how do you jump from one to another, and what type of skill sets are needed in each of these areas. This is just a quick snapshot, again, from the same tool to give you a highlight of what different types of technical skills and competencies are needed for a specific role. So for cyber risk manager, you can see the listing of the skill set as well as the proficiency level that is needed, at least in Singapore, for you to get that job. So, an amazing thing that you can go to the website and download is a checklist of everything that you would need if you are an employer. Then how do you come up with a job description when you are hiring somebody? If you are an employee looking for a job, you could use exactly the same tool, and the job description will tell you, give you a reference to compare against where you are today, and then see how you want to start making that journey into the ideal job description that comes from this tool. So extremely helpful in different areas to leverage such a free resource that the government has created here, and then go about your journey of embarking on the appropriate education support that you need. It is, while we are talking about cybersecurity and specific technical skills, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that it's not all about technology. It's not about hard skills alone. It is equally important, especially when we are in a foreign country where you may not have well-established networks, where the culture may be a little bit foreign, to look at the general skill sets as well, whether it is communication, whether it is mindset, whether it is interpersonal skills, team work. All of these are extremely important as you grow on your career ladder. From me, being an architect in the US to coming in and becoming a leader, I had to quickly jump from wanting to design a solution, wanting to come up with ways in which the machines work, to actually working with people, because most of our technology decisions at the time, at least, were happening in US, and I couldn't either. I could have worked throughout the night shift, or adapted, and I started investing in these type of skill sets, working closer to the business, working closer to the sales team, to understand how can, on one hand, I continue to provide value to the organization, but also understand the business in a way that not many engineers would think of it intuitively, and see how you stand out from your competition. How does leadership come in, and you help grow the team, grow the individuals who can then provide the work, and so on and so forth. So you have to look at the realities of the environment that you are in, and see what type of opportunities make sense. And after you pick the type of hard skills and the specific technology domains that you want to pursue, you should definitely keep a tab on what type of general skill sets are also required. And the beauty about the Skills Future framework is that it has it all in the first place. So, we saw on the previous slide that besides the tech skill competencies, they have mentioned some of the generic skills as well, and the proficiency level, so that you can start to think about that as well. If it's communication, join something like Toastmasters. If it is leadership, think about joining an organization like STS, and participate in organizing events that gives you amazing experience in leading a group of people without having any authority per se, purely because everybody believes in a common mission, and things like that. So you start looking at opportunities where you learn skills that are portable, that you could take in many different environments. So I know we're kind of getting to a top of the hour. So lastly, I'll just, again, this is available from the Skills Future website. I'll post the link once again for you to look at. But once you have done that, I think the next question anybody would come up is, okay, so now I know what I want to do. I know where I'm at. And so what type of certifications, what type of trainings, what type of experience do I need to get to make that jump? There's lots of information available, obviously, and I have CISSP, CSIM, and lots of different certifications from in cloud and Microsoft and Cisco and other things that are relevant. in business, in different other areas. But it's important to think about certification in a specific context of what is it that you want to achieve and how important are credentials to the job that you're trying to pursue or to the role that you are to pursue, trying to pursue within your own organization. And this is a very, very short kind of, I think, my summary to say if you are thinking about doing analysis, all from a security perspective, operations or testing, pen testing, AppSec testing, then SANS, ISACA has created a chain of certifications around cybersecurity nexus. Security Plus is a good beginner certification. ISC squared CISSP obviously has the breadth like no other certification does. EC Council is the creator of Certified Ethical Hacker. So these are the certifications that I would recommend you look at and then think about which one makes more sense for you to start your journey with. If you're into engineering and architecture, there is again advanced level certifications by ISC squared, by ISACA, as well as SANS that you could pursue to gain that proficiency level to justify a job in architecture or jump from systems or enterprise into cybersecurity architecture. There is a lot of, because Singapore being a financial hub, a lot of roles in governance, risk, and compliance. Again, these are some of the certifications. ISACA probably is the leader in that area with audits, with security management, with risk controls as well. To third-party IIAs here as well, and they offer a lot of trainings and certifications that you can pursue. And then last but not the least, there is a lot of emerging tech. So besides the certifications, there are lots of trainings on online MOOC platforms, Coursera and Udemy and so on and so forth, or even local organizations, right? NTU, NUS, all of them. If you are a PR or a citizen, there are a lot of providers that you can take advantage of through CITREP funding to pursue some of the trainings in IoT, blockchain, AI, and cloud. And coincidentally, it just so happens that it looks like it's a listing of next few sessions that STS Connect has organized. But security in each of these areas is extremely important as well. And there's lots of opportunities for individuals to pursue further training around that as well. So with that, I think I'll kind of close it to say that it may look like a pretty scary path, and there is opportunities on both sides. There is lots of things that you could do, but there's always bridges that you can construct to ensure that you have access to both sides of the of the field or the city or your career that you're thinking about. Don't think that if you are in one side, you have to stay on the other. There is amazing time to be in Singapore in tech, and cyber is, I would say, again, a little bit biased, but one of the fastest, hottest, and most exciting industry to get into. Let me kind of stop there and kind of bring back the admins to get the Q&A session kicked off.
Thank you, Forum. So we have few questions. So basically, I think you covered, but since there are specific questions, maybe they need some insights or more details about it. So first question is, how easy for a manager or team member to switch the career from dev and production support space? What is the basic background work he need to do before moving to this role?
From dev and operations support into cybersecurity?
Yeah.
So, as I listed some of the roles, again, within cyber, there's multiple domains in which you would want to go. I would say if you are already in dev and operations support, then operations in security, whether it is a SOC type of a role or DevOps type of a role or DevSecOps type of a role, which makes more sense. And there, because that could allow you to leverage your existing knowledge quite a bit. There is again, if you are looking at public cloud, there's enough trainings available from all the major three platforms. There are certifications called CCSK from Cloud Security Alliance, and they partner with lots of other organizations that you could get. But that's from a just general leveraging your existing experience and certification perspective. On the other, if you want, I would say there is also a lot of open source projects going on. OWASP is a really good organization that does most of the things in the open source area that you can start experimenting with, doing certain security projects and start making your profile online kind of more visible and clear that you want to make that switch.
Great. So what is OR? I mean, is there any full form or how we can contribute or learn from it?
What is OWASP, you mean?
You said there is a open source projects, OR or something.
OWASP, yeah. So I just posted the link.
Okay.
Sorry, I should probably do it for everybody as well.
Oh, OWASP. Okay, got it. Thank you. So the next question is, I mean, again, it is on the similar lines, like experience cyberspace. What is the prerequisite for switching? I think you answered this. I mean, basically they were talking about what is the how quickly 10 plus years guy can switch to a cyberspace, and also there is another question on the similar lines, but it is 15 plus years of experience in IT service delivery to switch into cybersecurity. I think both are answered already. So there is another, what are the roles at that mid-level management professional to explore and get into cybersecurity? What is the skill set that is needed? And any certification parts you covered, but yeah, mid-level management professional, this question is for.
Sure. So I would say, like any domain, right, there is a tech-heavy emphasis type roles, and there is leadership heavy emphasis type of roles. On the tech side, I would still put, as I shared the career pathway or the IT infocom telecom transformation path, you can either look on the governance, risk, compliance side for non-tech heavy if you want to grow in the governance side, right? If you have been doing service delivery where your role primarily was on the quality aspects, on the governance of the delivery aspect, then those roles probably would be able to leverage your experience a little bit more. If you have been in operations, if you have been a developer, if you have been an architect, then there are roles in very, very similar type of areas, whether it is cryptography architecture, whether it is identity access management, cloud, network architecture. There's lots of different areas, and I wouldn't think of cybersecurity is like completely different, right? At the fundamental level, is the same technology that powers everything. You just have to it requires three things, right? One, and the most important, is to know that it's 100% you, that you have to have the willingness to go and try something and fail and try again. So that's one. Second is having an environment around you where you surround yourself with people, your managers, your leaders, your friends, the network that can guide you when something does happen, give you a tip on the certifications that you can get, a training that you can enroll. There's lots and lots of free resources. Don't think that this is an expensive journey at all. There, a lot of people do just the free resources and get to a point where then they can justify investing a little bit money to get certain certifications. And then last but not the least is how do you approach the actual search for that role? And whether it is creating a good LinkedIn profile, whether it is going out and becoming members of professional associations, whether it is seeking out mentors and sponsors within the community to try and make it clear that you have a passion for that particular role, for that particular industry or that domain. You can't just expect that if you go and get the certification, people will just know that you are interested in it, right? So you have to put yourself out there.
So, another question is, now everyone is working from home. How security managed in personal computer? Who is accessing client networks?
So this is clearly a pretty, major challenge, right, for all of us in different sides, and depending on whether you are on the security side or on the tech side, either you face those challenges or you have to design those challenges. I think, again, I touched upon the concept of zero trust a little bit, but the idea is that everybody, it used to be that if you are connected on a company provided machine, then everything is fair game because we trust the machine that you use, and you're already working from the network that we trust, which is inside the office. So you can pretty much access everything if you have the right credentials. Now that's changing, and people not only use things like multi-factor authentication, but also looking at behavioral analytics to see whether the machine that you are using looks a little bit different than what we saw last time, whether the browser that you are using is any different. So there is a lot of behavioral analytics that happens at the user level as well as at the machine level. There are explicit checks that happen on a regular basis. So it's not that you once provide a password and that's it. For every action that you want to take, you may be thrown a different challenge. You may require different types of approvals. So there are tools that are being available or made available by different companies around the world, and that's why it's an amazing opportunity, even not just within the enterprise side or end user computing side, but also from a product side, where if you people want to enter security as a product type of career role, that they can take their skills into helping develop amazing new services and products as well.
So, next question is, what are your suggestions for university grads to shape up their career towards cybersecurity? And there is sub question on the same line. What can a student do to reach the CISO position? Mhm.
Wow. Okay. So what is good is increasingly, I mean, this has been going on for last 5-10 years. Increasingly, or universities are starting to offer a curriculum in cybersecurity that is specifically geared towards roles that are available. So, I know Kasi and I and a lot of engineers within PayPal go and do sessions by, I'm sure STS and has many members that do it as well, that talk about the specific needs of skill set that students can start working towards, accumulating before they come out. But even there in cybersecurity, we've been helping them build a curriculum that is a bit more practical. So because they don't have the luxury of starting and then spending 10 years to then become, practical at the rate at which technology is changing, the types of attacks that we spoke about are changing. The curriculum needs to get updated pretty regularly. Some of the associations that I mentioned, ISC Squared, ISACA, a lot of them have started to create modules where they're partnering with universities so that when graduates come out, they already have some sort of a certification that is not a full credential, but at least they have an understanding of what is required, so that when they gain enough experience and then they demonstrate that they have acquired certain skills, the certification will automatically be given to them, so that they can start then displaying that on their profile. I think, a fresh grad to a CISO, while it's interesting to think about it, I wouldn't get too stuck on the CISO role itself. What is important is to understand what specific technology area, what specific role you are interested in. And if you do something that you enjoy, that you love, you will do it well. And when you do something well, you will obviously grow to whatever role that exists. CISO itself, I think, as a role probably will go through multiple transformations in the next decade. So for fresh grads, I wouldn't worry too much about CISO.
So next question is, I'm not so sure if it is related to the quantum computing or, the cyber challenges after this, but let me read the question. Quantum computing era about to start. What are the challenges and opportunities available? Also, please enlighten on post-quantum cryptography. So it is his question. So if it is just quantum computing, yeah, definitely we'll be addressing in next subsequent sessions. But if you can speak something about cyber challenges on post quantum cryptography thing, that would be helpful.
Sure. I mean, so like everything else, right? If you think of just the technology adoption and the advancements that is coming, quantum kind of takes it to a completely next level. Those that are familiar with how we do normal operations today, how qubits will completely change the speed, the power with which mathematical calculations can be performed, and all of that will be covered in the quantum. From a pure security perspective, what it means is the fundamental of cryptography that exists today, that the internet runs on, some of the algorithms that people maybe have heard of, that power, public key cryptography or public key infrastructure is RSA, and it relies on certain mathematical function that requires certain prime numbers to be extremely hard to perform operations on. So the idea that the computers that we have access to today will take thousands of years to perform those operations becomes completely irrelevant when you have quantum computers available. So the biggest challenge from that perspective is that the cryptography that is the basis of everything that happens, the commerce that happens online, the protection that is available will be broken. And that's why there is a lot of research going on in the post-quantum crypto, is how do you create encryption algorithms that are able to defend against quantum computers, the speed and the power with which they're going on. And as Kasi mentioned, since research was an area that I was responsible for, I just handed it over. We are doing multiple different projects in partnership with NTU in Singapore to look at applied post-quantum crypto to come up with new ways in which some of the protections that we have built, again, around cryptography within our system continue to stay, or we start transforming some of the traditional cryptography algorithms to post-quantum crypto, whether it is lattice or others. I think you will all learn about it in the upcoming session.
Next question is not about cyber security, but it is more for PayPal. So if you can answer, any possibility to extend support for associations who are doing service to society to provide payment gateway platforms with discounts or subsidized?
Yeah, no, I think this is a very relevant question. I'm glad that it's not about something controversial that I can't answer. So we do offer subsidized, discounted, payment processing services for nonprofits, and would love to talk to you offline and find ways to integrate the solutions that we have available in Singapore and other places to make sure, one, that you can leverage the power of PayPal in collecting the funds and the ease that comes with it, but also that you get the subsidized rates.
Okay, great. So next question is, what is the current demand for cyber security professionals in Singapore? Will this demand sustain for a long time?
I've heard multiple leaders, multiple government heads talk about the extreme shortage of talent from a tech perspective. And the three areas that they always mention are AI, data science, and cybersecurity. If anybody that attended the Singapore FinTech Fest that happened in the second week of November, just after your kickoff, would have heard, Minister Heng Swee Keat, the senior minister in PMO's cabinet, um, talk about, I think, Singapore setting aside $5 billion, right, over the next few years, specifically geared towards cybersecurity. And it comes in multiple different areas, in education, in research between public-private collaboration, as well as creating roles across the board to grow Singapore's kind of profile as a place where cybersecurity talent is available. So I think if you are in the industry right now, the prospects for cybersecurity look pretty hot, especially you are in Singapore, and the resources for you to get the support, the education are also incredibly good.
Thank you. So next question is, what are the measures taken to motivate employees, especially during pandemic, as people are facing many challenges like mental issues, depression, etc. This is not related to cybersecurity, just your thoughts from the leadership point of view.
I mean, just purely from what we have done with our teams, it is extremely important. It is a very real problem that people have faced for different reasons, especially if you are living in a foreign country, working alone, working all the time in a lockdown, not able to go out, not able to meet your colleagues, have created pretty tricky situation. So as leaders, one of the things that has worked well for us is creating virtual games, quizzes, sending coffee, lunch, vouchers, or there's amazing, I think, services available around Singapore. It has become a new industry. For Isaka, we did a virtual treasure hunt game for organizing or for individuals to kind of get to know each other, because we've had a lot of new employees join, new members join. So, virtual game is one. Sending out in the lockdown time, sending out some small gifts is another one. Now that the lockdown has opened up a little bit, you could kind of come out and meet. But what is, I think, above all of that, what is important is to create a safe environment for people to talk about what they have, to get professional support when you need it, to not try to solve all the issues by yourself, to find people that you can speak with and address these issues as quickly as possible.
Okay.
So for leaders to kind of remove the stigma around having discussions around this topic is extremely important. Yeah.
Great to know all the things. Yeah, I mean, many of, since from past 2 years we have these situations, many wouldn't have met, their colleagues, people who ever joined in last 2 years. Definitely, yeah, that would be helpful to connect with the families and also to get rid of this, the negativity in the minds or depressions, whatever. So yeah, thank you very much. So that was the last question. So we are done with the question and answers also. So I think that is almost we come to end of the session. So on behalf of Singapore Telugu Samajam, STS President and Executive Committee, thank you very much, Mr. Poram Mehta, from our bottom of our heart, for taking the session to cover a lot of insights on cyberspace and also other aspects in relation to cyberspace. It is definitely useful for many of us. I also thank all the participants who taken the time to attend this. I would like to extend my thanks to all collaborated associations for extending the support. As we mentioned earlier, in this series, we are planning to run monthly, fortnightly sessions to provide insights on interesting and useful topics like this and forthcoming technologies for a better future and better employability opportunities and upskill people skills. So these will be run by respective industry leaders, but not by the trainers, to give maximum benefit to the community because they come up with real-time experience and potential opportunities. So next sessions, to name few, which are in pipeline, are data science and artificial intelligence, blockchain, quantum computing, cryptocurrency. So we will be creating WhatsApp groups for respective technology, and we can limit conversations related to it and help each other and get guidance from industry experts like Mr. Poram Mehta. For any program participation, and participants are the key, very good participation encourages us to conduct more sessions. So please do participate and encourage your friends to join to get the benefit out of these sessions. So our next session will be on data science and artificial intelligence. This will be run by Mr. Muni Vinay, Head of Data Enterprise Intelligence, Lazada, on January 8th from the for the same time, basically 10 to 12 noon. So we'll be sharing the flyers soon. So thank you very much all for participating and joining the sessions today.
Well, thanks a lot for this opportunity, and really appreciate you starting this initiative, and really looking forward to some of these amazing sessions that are coming here, and wishing you all the best in success.
Thank you, Mr. Puram, for being with us in very first initial session of our series. And it's a good enlightenment about the cybersecurity for the people who are already working in cybersecurity as a career and who want to start their career in cybersecurity. For both of them, it's a useful insight today, and it was a very good session. Thank you very much for your time, valuable time. Being what time for you in Chicago? Still, it's
not too bad. It's only about 10 p.m. I think those of us that work in Singapore, especially with multinational organizations, are kind of used to working.
True. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks much, and have a safe trip back.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, we will be sharing the slides to your registered email address. So yeah, we will be taking the phone numbers from the same registration, and we'll be creating WhatsApp group as well. So yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, all.